Dale Scott, Major League Baseball umpire for 33 years and now MLB rules expert, joins us on the call after the call. Dale, thanks for being with us. First, let us start in the Bronx. The Yankees and the Mariners on the play. Mike Ford is at the plate, and there are two errors on the play. Take us through this one, please.
Yeah, Donaldson's bobble isn't considered a play. So his first play by an infielder is this throw that gets away and goes into dead ball territory. Now, normally, the first play by an umpire, or first play by an infielder, the runners are advanced 2 bases from the time of the pitch. However, if all runners, including the batter runner, have reached their next base before the throw, which happened here, obviously, a second, I think there might have been some confusion as to where Ford was when Donaldson threw the ball. But if all runners, including the batter runner, reach first or reach a base, the next base before the throw, then it's 2 bases from the time of the throw, which obviously we see from this view that Ford had reached first, so he would get third base. There must have been a little confusion maybe with the crew about where they went.
Yeah, so first there was a rules check verifying the rule for awarding bases when the ball is thrown. That play was confirmed as far as that's concerned, but then it was ultimately overturned because Mike Ford should have been awarded third base because he had already reached first at the time of the throw. Am I saying that correctly?
Correct. Even though it was the first play by an infielder, he had already reached first before that play was made. So he gets 2 bases from the time of the throw. And the time of the throw is when it leaves his hand.
Okay, so obviously it didn't really matter in the outcome of this game. The Mariners had this one in their hands solidly, but it was an interesting play nonetheless. Okay, Dale, I want to take us back to Wednesday in San Francisco, and this seems to be a play that we talk about all of the time, the home plate collision rule. This one, of course, between the San Francisco Giants and I want to say the San Diego Padres, of course. Gary Sanchez behind the plate. Tell me more.
Yeah, well, just before we look at these, or as we look at these, the catcher's not considered in violation if he blocks the runner when making a legitimate attempt to field the throw. There's been instances where the catcher has kind of abused that rule and is fielding the throw but goes out of his way and doesn't need to block the path of the runner. In this case, he sets up correctly, and he's fine as long as that left foot had stayed in fair territory as he came up. In the judgment of the replay official, Sanchez didn't have to cross into the foul territory with his left foot to field that. And by doing that, as you see here, if he would have stayed fair, he would have been fine. But his foot was just over the line and was considered, as far as the replay official was concerned, that that was unnecessary for him to do that. And that very close. The collision rule is very confusing. A very confusing rule, and it can be the difference between violation and compliance by just a few inches of where the catcher sets up. So the nuance there is it's a fine line.
And I'm glad that you bring that up, Dale, because it seems like this is the play and the rule that we're constantly talking about. Bob Melvin, the manager of the Padres, former catcher, clearly upset about this call. And we're going to move on to the next play with Bruce Bochy, former catcher, Hall of Fame manager, by the way, that is upset about the call on Tuesday in Chicago. So here's what happens with this one. It is the Chicago White Sox as well as the Texas Rangers. Take us through this one, please, with Jonah Heim catching.
Yeah, Jonah Heim, he started in violation and he continued in violation when fielding the throw. And what I mean by that is his initial setup was in violation. Now, it's not a violation yet because we don't have a play, but he already started off in the wrong place. Now, when he moved to his left to field the throw, in the judgment of the replay official, he didn't need to go all the way to block the path of the runner to field that. He could have fielded that legally and in compliance in front of the plate and had a play on the runner. Again, we're talking very, very close here, just a few inches either way, and he's in compliance or out of compliance. And in this situation, the replay official, in his judgment, felt that his move was beyond what he needed to do, and that cut off Andrus, the path to the plate.
Yeah, so the call was overturned. Elvis Andrus was called safe. And it's funny that you say that, there's such a minute difference between compliance versus violation. They say football is a game of inches, but when it comes to this home plate collision rule, Dale, I feel this is a game of inches. And the irony is that it's, named after basically Buster Posey back in 2011 when Bruce Bochy was their manager. So you have former catchers as managers debating this rule. Do you see this changing anytime soon as far as the rule is concerned?
I could see maybe some tweaks with it, or try to redefine it a little bit to make it a little bit easier to understand. I remember when I was still working on the field when this rule was first imposed, and when it first came out, it was very difficult to figure out what exactly they wanted us to call and not call and that kind of stuff. They've tried through the last few years to define it a little bit better. I'm not privy to the meetings that the umpires have every year and the videos that they see, so I'm not exactly sure what they told them, how to administer this. But just going through the regulations and the rules, it's a real fine line, and the nuance can be so slight that to most fans, it's like, well, what are you talking about? But if you break it down and see where the exact positioning is, and again, when it comes down to everything else, a lot of it's judgment. Your judgment and my judgment when we have something that's so close to violation and compliance, it could vary. And so everybody has an opinion for sure.
And I love the fact that now umpires are using microphones more to alert the fans as to what's going on. And I would rather have the judgment call, Dale, than robot umpires any day of the week. Dale Scott, MLB rules official now, longtime Major League great umpire. We appreciate the insight and the education. Thanks for being with us on the call after the call.
You bet. Thank you.